Go ahead.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Good Deeds Note Investing Podcast, Open Mic Night. I am your co-host, Gail Anthony Greenberg, here with Christopher Seveny. Hey, Chris. Hello.
I'm not fabulous anymore. I am refreshed.
I just run out of superlatives for you. You're just so everything.
But we also have a great co-host with us tonight as we kick off a little theme for this month of October. So
yes.
I'll let you introduce our lovely guest.
So this is the first of our October Fright Nights leading up to Halloween. We are trying to find investors who have the scariest possible stories to tell as a cautionary tale to all of you, but also for your entertainment and education experience. Tonight, we're thrilled to have with us a colleague and friend, Bill Greismer from Ohio. Bill is the president and high poobah of Stonegate Capital, and actually somebody that, it's really funny, Bill. I'm very nostalgic and excited about tonight because I think the case history that you're going to talk about was actually the first time you and I ever talked on the phone. It was one of those moments to just huddle and be like, what would you do with this one? So I'm even more interested probably than anyone to find out like the whole epic tale of what went on here.
So, it was the hero's journey, I
love that. Are you a Joseph Campbell fan?
Any literature, I just like good writing, period.
Very cool. Joseph Campbell is talks about myth, and he studied every culture in the world and discovered that the hero's journey is a common myth. It's how we all leave home and go out and dare to do great things. So I think note investing would definitely fall into that category. So why don't you just take a minute, Bill, and introduce yourself and tell everybody about your hero's journey in notes.
So thank you very much for having me here tonight, Chris and Gail. My name is Bill Greismer. I'm the managing member of Stonegate Capital with my wife, Heidi Greismer. And I've been investing in notes since 2016. And I've been around a little bit and really studied or learned materials from a number of different note trainers and that type of thing. I've run the whole gamut here. Originally I was really thinking I would just want to do performing notes, and then I kind of switched and started doing non-performing notes, and now I'm kind of in the middle and just kind of looking for the very best opportunities wherever it is I can find it. I started investing in notes really just for a couple reasons. First of all, to just start to have my own business. I kind of, had this inner drive that I wanted to do something like that, but I really didn't want to be a landlord. I was a landlord briefly for about a year and a half, and, it wasn't a disaster, but it was, even though it was a distant property and I had a management company, it was still kind of a lot to it and such. So we ended up selling those properties, and then I went into note investing, and just excited to be here tonight and share this with everyone.
So is this note that you're going to talk about tonight, was this the first one you bought or one of the first ones that you got?
This was the very first note I bought, yes. Yep.
I think there's some special rule that the first one has to be a doozy in some respect. I think everyone knows my first one burned down. So yours unfortunately didn't burn down.
It was close. You're going to see a picture. I almost, the note gods almost took care of it for a moment.
That would have been a quick, merciful solution to this note. But
the one thing is that I've really realized, and, I wrap up a little bit toward the end. This is a flash forward, you mentioned literature, so we'll start with the end, and then work our way back as to how we got to there. With any experience, you can learn, you can make a return in either money or education. And, I honestly don't know which is better. Although this did not turn out to be a great experience, I made it work. And you know what? I learned a tremendous amount from doing this that has helped me in a lot of other things. A few weeks after I bought this one, I bought another performing note that was more or less pretty flawless, and, you know, it just paid, and I just didn't learn as much on that, but, you know, I did make, you know, 30 something percent return on it. So I don't know which is more helpful. I guess it depends on your circumstance. If you'd rather get paid financially, or if you'd rather learn a lot from the experience.
Yeah, I think it's nice to have a balance
Yep.
of both.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
Otherwise, you know, I think people who have a lot of bad experiences up front,
So
they're just not clicking with the, you know, the note life. You know, they end up leaving because they think it's not really a business, like it's not a viable business. So
yeah, I mean, that's it. You know, you have to, you know, one of my favorite books is Mindset by Carol Dweck, and you really need to have a growth mindset. And if something doesn't go well, don't just, you know, throw up your hands and walk away in disgust. Just try to learn from it and say, okay, what do I need to do differently? What do I need to do better? Who else do I need to talk to? That type of thing.
well, I think after hearing about this one, no one will accuse you of giving up easily.
So what we'll do, we'll just kind of go through this, Chris and Gail, and then you folks are welcome to, you know, chime in with your thoughts on what you see and what you might have done different. You know, I've already learned a lot from this, but my whole point in doing this tonight was just to share some things with the audience. I presented this once already and got a very, very positive return. So that's something I really appreciate about your podcast is, you know, you really do kind of show the ins and outs. And like you said, not every note is sunshine and unicorns, you know.
Rainbows and unicorns.
Rainbows and unicorns. Maybe a little sunshine. You know, you can't have a rainbow without sunshine. All right, how do I progress the screen here?
I think if you just click on the mouse or push to the right, there you go.
Okay, there we go.
Yep, left to right arrow. So good.
How do I go back now? Oops.
I think back arrow. I can go back.
There we go. I got it now.
Okay.
So this is just my little play here. Just something a little bit different, you know. I should use my voice. In the note investing business, the people work with two separate yet equally important groups: the investors who manage performing notes and the investors who deal with the delinquent. This is their story. Bum bum.
My wife is watching Law and Order right now.
Well, this is a better show.
This makes me realize how much we need sound effects in this podcast.
Okay. So this note was located in, the asset, I should say, was located in Zanesville, Ohio. So I live near Columbus. So Zanesville is about roughly an hour and a half away from my house. So that was part of the reason I was attracted to this note to begin with. So this note was originated in early March of 2015. The current unpaid balance, that's what it was, of course, at the time that I bought it. The face interest rate on the note was 9%. The principal and interest, which of course is what we make on our investment, was $300 per month. The remaining term was 135. The last payment had been received on March the 14th. Next payment was due on March the 1st. And the BPO, the worth of the house, was $40,900. So I know, Chris and Gail, you guys probably already see one issue right off the bat, just based on the little information that I sent you so far here, knowing that this is, at least has been marketed as a performing note. You probably see what I'm referring to.
Yeah, so they paid 6 weeks late, the February payment.
Exactly.
And who knows when the March one is coming.
Well, exactly. And that's what, honestly, hadn't really been taught at the time. I didn't really understand the difference in that. So, That's one thing to identify right off the bat. So you just want to, those that are learning and watching and learning, those two dates there, if you're looking at a performing note, the last payment received and then the next payment due, those ought to be the same, and they ought to be, pretty recent. So it might not be this was the very first week of April that I bought it. I just figured that, the April payment just hadn't been posted yet. So there might be a little give there, but ideally, if it was a true performing note, the last payment received would have been, March 1st, and then the next payment due would have been April 1st.
Right. Well, I don't want to say that it never happens, but normally a borrower wouldn't make another payment 2 weeks after making a payment. So.
Right.
It happens, but can actually go back one slide.
Yep.
Bill, I was just gonna make the comment that you like to see the last payment received be before the next payment due date. So,
yeah.
Just for
as a general rule of thumb.
No, general rule for performing. Because some people get very confused on what those two numbers mean.
Okay.
Thanks, Bill.
Yeah.
So that's kind of gave away this slide a little bit. So I'm going to kind of reveal the answers to these in just a minute. So, one of the things you calculate that's a little more important with a performing note is what is the borrower loan to value. That's what LTV stands for. I like to also calculate how much equity a borrower has in the house. It's kind of similar to to the loan to value ratio. But I kind of realize a loan to value ratio can throw you off depending on the value of a house. I mean, there's a big difference between a $20,000 house and then a $200,000 house.
So
and
Bill, was that a seller supplied BPO value?
Yes, that was another thing that, I should mention is, always get your own BPO or your own, estimate of worth, whether you're, hiring a local realtor or at the very least, should be more than just looking up on Zillow and Trulia and that type of thing. Giving it away a couple slides in advance, but always get eyes on that property. So like I was saying, then another thing I like to do is kind of figure out roughly how much the borrower has, how much equity the borrower has. And then in addition, how much equity I have. And then I like to figure out, what discount I'm buying that unpaid balance at. And, it's pricing is an art, more than a science actually. So you kind of look at a lot of these different factors and you figure out what you would pay for this note. So the folks that are watching, they, just see what else it is they would want to know. So does the borrower have incentive to pay? Okay. So a lot of these lessons, is what I have learned now that I didn't know at the time. You just want to see, does a borrower have incentive to kind of stay and pay? Do they have some, quote, skin in the game? So these are the values that we talked about here. The borrower's loan to value came out to 62%. I show on the screen there how I figured that out. So that's kind of a measure of how much the borrower is extended, okay? It's really just one measure of borrower equity. So usually for a single family performing note, you want to be in the range of about 75 to 80%. Might be a little bit more if it's a really primo note, but you kind of want to shoot for that range. And then the lower, the better, actually. Okay, so on this particular note, I did know enough to figure this out. I saw, 62% is really pretty good. I mean, if we're usually shooting for 75 to 80, that was pretty good. The borrower equity, I figured that out by looking at the fair market value of the house minus the unpaid balance, and that kind of puts it into a, pure dollar figure. So that's how much the borrower has, how much equity they have in a specific dollar format. This can, note the caps there, indicate their incentive to stay and pay, but as you will find out, it is not a guarantee. So I kind of looked at that also, said, well, this person will probably just keep on paying. Because if they end up walking away, they're walking away from roughly $15,000 in equity. So, any comments on that so far, Chris or Gail?
Nope.
Yep.
Pretty explanatory.
All
I
right.
understand your logic.
So I ended up paying a total of $21,000 for this note. Okay. People at home, you can start to kind of get a judgment as to how much you would pay for this. So what was my investment to value? So my investment to value was came out to right around 51%. So that's really, really good for a performing note. For a non-performing note, which it kind of turned out to be with the value of the house, it's a little bit much, but not overwhelmingly so. But at the time, I really thought that was pretty good. So then I kind of looked at it as, or I should say I've learned to look at it as, what is my security going into this situation then? So my equity, I took the fair market value minus the cost of the note, and that was just under $20,000. So that's kind of my margin of safety. Okay, if everything goes bad, if they stop paying, that's kind of what I had to quote work with. Okay, I did learn that can go pretty quick unless you really pay close attention. And then the other thing I like to look at, I've learned to look at, is the discount of the unpaid balance. Discount of the unpaid balance. So for this, I was buying that unpaid balance at about 82%, a little bit more than that. That's just a little bit higher than optimal, especially for this asset. But again, I already went over, I had, a lot of other factors that, I really did like about it. This would really come into play a lot, actually, also, if you think there's a potential for getting the borrower to pay off early. So if you could buy a discount of unpaid balance, I don't know, 60%, and then you maybe know a mortgage broker or something, or that the borrower's credit isn't too bad, and you can think on getting them refinanced in 6 months or so, that can really shoot your returns up through the roof. So on a situation like that, I would love to get a discount of the unpaid balance really low. Actually, I have the collateral file review. I didn't know if it's possible to put that up on the screen. I did redact it and such, but I want to make sure that we get through this for everybody tonight in a timely fashion. We'll, I guess, keep those in reserve for now, and if you want to, we'll call them back up later. How's that sound?
Yeah, that works.
So again, we bought the note for $21,000. The mistake that I made was not really fully confirming the current value. Like we talked about already, as it turned out, this asset was in really, really poor condition. I'm going to show you some slides, some pictures in a little bit. The front porch steps were really, they had the Leaning Tower of Pisa situation going on there. The front porch was really, you couldn't walk on it safely. It was definitely a safety hazard concern. Someone would fall through the wood really and probably hurt themselves. There was no steps in the back. You had to kind of rise up like a foot or so level to even get into the house because you couldn't go in that front porch. The paint was just really bad. The gutter downspouts were missing. The front post was actually connected with like a bungee cord. So again, if I had a realtor go out and look at it, they probably would have told me that, at least from the outside, this house doesn't look so hot. So you just always want to get physical eyes on an asset before you close. This is just crucial, really, whether it's a performing note or a non-performing note. I always recommend, an investor go out and get physical eyes on the asset, and also always get your own, broker price opinion is what BPO stands for, or your own appraisal, or your own, realtor analysis. Just something something to get, has a clue, not your cousin Vinny. Someone just try to get a reasonable current fair market value price on that asset at that moment. So another mistake I did not know to do at the time is I never checked on the utility status. So as it turned out, if I had, I would have learned that there wasn't any gas service to the house. So yes, this is in Ohio. We do have colder winters, so that should, kind of raise your eyebrows a little bit. I also did not call to confirm water service. If I had, I would have learned that there was no water service connected to the house either. So that ought to raise your eyebrows or your antenna even a little bit more. I mean, there were people living in the house. What did these people just not use water? Were they pod people from the planet Mars? I don't know, but they did not have water service to the house. I'll tell you why in a little bit. So another good thing to do, and Chris and Gail have talked about this before, is it's a good idea to check if a house has basic utility service to the house, just your basic water, electric, and gas. And if it doesn't, it's just worth trying to think of why, or just know that that's a potential concern. So when I bought this note, it was boarded with a servicer called Peak. And I did not know this, but Peak was very shortly to leave the servicing business. And when I bought the note, I asked for service to be transferred to another servicer called Allied. And the transferring took months. I told you it was early of the first week of April that I bought it. And they did not get it boarded with Allied until it was either late July, I believe, or early August. So that's not typical. It can take some time, but what's that, 4 months, 5 months, something like that? That is not typical. In all this time, the borrowers simply stopped paying. As it turned out, in the long term, the borrowers never actually paid a single penny on this note after I bought it. Now, whether that was partly related to Peak leaving the business and then transferring it to Allied, I did try to during this time period. I was making frequent phone calls to where I bought the note, and then to Peak itself, and I guess very kindly, I kind of got the runaround, and I kept calling Allied. Nope, we don't have it. We're happy to work with it, and we'll, start taking action and start to run with the ball after we get it. But they just didn't get any information. And then there really wasn't much action I could take, as it was in transaction. All I got from Peak again was, yeah, we're working on it, and they should have the file next week. Well, I can't remember how many weeks I heard that. So just want to watch your servicer transitions. Sometimes I've learned it's depends, and you can't say this all the time, but sometimes it's worth considering just leaving it with a servicer where you buy the note. If you think there's a chance that they'll, right. Come on, computer. There we go. So, whoops. So I guess you can say I was a little too patient. Oops. Hold on, guys. Sorry.
No worries.
So, essentially then you just want to take prompt action if a borrower is not paying. Whoops. I see. So there's a gap here. So you just want to take prompt action if a borrower is not paying. And I suppose I could have, if people know me, they know I'm generally pretty even keeled, and, I'm not the type to really blow up at people. I wonder if I would have gotten better service if I had blown up at somebody after, months of this. Sometimes you just have to take more of an active role in getting the transfer completed.
Hey, Bill, for people listening, what do you think on the other stuff you bought? What's the average time it usually takes to get something boarded?
Well, it depends on the servicer, but a couple months is kind of at the outset, I would say. The further end, don't you think, Chris? I mean,
yeah, I mean, most of it I see usually takes about a month.
Yeah, I was gonna say 4 weeks.
4 weeks.
Yeah.
It can go to 6, but one of the things, and the reason I asked that question, because I think a lot of people think on the opposite, that it's like, hey, in a week, is it transferred? And it's like, no, there's going to be,
Exactly.
The
No.
goodbye letter, a hello letter all needs to be approved. If there's initial data and final data, it's a lengthy process.
Yeah, I think what your story is really reminding me of is when you're new and you kind of expect things to work a lot better than they do. And you don't realize that you need to be checking in with the servicer, kind of shepherding the process a little bit. I mean, you kind of have to find the right balance between harassing them and guiding them appropriately.
Right. Exactly. That's what I was getting at. Maybe it would have gone a little better if I'd been, a little more insistent. However, again, at the time, just a month or two later, Peak was just getting out of the business altogether. So
I think that was a really unusual case. And
yes.
Anybody who knows an investor of any scale who has been in the business for, at least as long as you have, Bill, that there a lot of people lost a lot of money when Peak very suddenly and without warning went out of business.
Yep.
And they had not been doing their job. People lost properties at tax sale because they weren't paying the taxes. All kinds of, it was like a major shockwave in the note world.
Yes. So that's what I'm saying. I was, now this was kind of small potatoes compared to a lot of what you're talking about. This was just my one little note, but this was an example, a tsunami like that is going to hit, pretty much everybody, even, my little note that was the first one ever. So, but just exactly what you said, Chris, usually 4 to 6 weeks, 2 months would be, really at the extreme end of the bell-shaped curve. So we get to late July here, and the borrower still had not made a payment. We finally got the servicer transferred, and Allied, the new servicer, did talk with the borrower several times about a modification. The borrower said, yes, we, like the house. We want to stay in the house. We're planning to stay here. We want to talk about a modification. They promised several times about, yes, I'll send you, one payment next week, and you should have that, and then we'll talk about a modification from there. It just never panned out. For one reason or another, they just never really delivered. They never, sent in even that one token payment or anything. So that went on just a few months then. So, August, September, and October. So kind of another lesson that I learned from this is I tried to be kind of too nice. What I should have done is started legal proceedings. I could even do that while we were doing that. They hadn't paid in, 4 or 5 months already. People that are learning from this, you can be nice, but to a point. After that, you have to take action. I think I've heard Chris and Gail say this. People just have more of a tendency to respond to a letter from an attorney, the old notice of demand, rather than, a servicer saying, hey, we're just calling to see how things are going, and if we can, get some type of a payment from you. Sometimes that letter from attorneys just more of an incentive for them to sit up and take notice and, make changes.
No, absolutely.
It never actually occurred to me to wonder how servicers talk to borrowers. Like, are they actually that friendly?
Well,
they're recorded, so you could always ask for the conversation.
I think I will after this. I was hoping for sort of like the iron fist in the velvet glove kind of thing. you know.
Yeah, and Chris, you had posted on a post within the last couple of days here about if you should do this yourself or have a servicer do it.
Mhm.
Like Joel has said, you can have an unpleasant conversation, but you can try to do it pleasantly. And that's it's probably more of an art than anything. And my day job, for some people that know this, I still work part-time as a physical therapist. And sometimes I have to do that in physical therapy, but there is a point where you have to do it. When someone's really not doing what they have to do, either that they're not paying on their note, or they're say they want to get stronger, but they can't find the time in an entire day to do 15 minutes of exercise. You have to talk with them sometimes, have the come to Jesus talk, and you have to take action.
Yeah,
So,
what I do, Bill, typically is if the borrower starts commenting about pay history or anything like that, I just tell them, look, I'm not the person, you got to talk to the servicer. But once it's at the point of negotiating, like, hey, you're 4 months behind, that's where, how much can you pay? When can you pay it? I make it clear, I hear from them, and then I restate it again. Then I'll be like, okay, I'll follow it up in an email. And then I tell them, I'm very friendly in all my conversations, but I'll tell them, look, you need to make this work. And if it doesn't, you better pick up the phone and call me, because, I'm basically the last resort. And, after me, it's too late. So it's kind of, how I play it.
yeah, and kind of that's a active listening technique that you're talking about, Chris. It's very wise of you to do that. When you do that, when you kind of listen carefully to what they said, and then a lot of times you'll restate it maybe in slightly different words, it shows the person that, hey, I'm a real person, and I hear what you're saying, and I'm respecting what you're saying, and we can work on this together. You're not just blowing them off and not even listening to them. So that's a active listening technique that's a very effective, and the vast majority of people really like that. And you're getting a couple messages here. Okay, here we go. Is this session being recorded for later playback? Yes. I can tell you that Chris and Gail record each and every one of their Thursday mic, open night mics, Terry, so you'll be welcome to listen to this later on. Chris Daniel says that he's having trouble hearing you, so just try to sit a little closer to the microphone or speak up a little bit. He's so just so quiet, so quietly competent, but just make sure that they can hear you, because they'd love to get your feedback. And Chris, David Chance asked here, did you just say you follow up with an email? I thought we shouldn't email the borrowers. I'll let Chris answer that, and then I'll answer if I have something else to add.
Yeah, I'll usually ask them for an email address, and I'll basically reiterate the conversation. It's like, hey, it was good talking to you this afternoon. And as part of the discussion, here's kind of like the payments that, the payment plan that you agreed to. And it's not saying, hey, give me a payment. It's just restating the conversation. I do have in the bottom of, the footer of the email, the whole debt collection comments, because I use, I use different entities for my notes. So I have different email addresses for those entities that, I just create the custom footer with it as well. And yeah, so, I mean, I'm not usually emailing them saying, hey, look, your payment didn't come in or something like that. But if I have a conversation with them, yeah, there's no reason why you can't. And again, it's literally, hey, John, based on a discussion on, October 1st, you noted that you're, as part of the agreement, you'll make a payment on October 15th of $500, another 1,000 on November 1st. And basically, period. That's it. And, then it's, in the record, I usually ask them to please confirm they're in agreement. That way, 6 months later, they try and want to go to mediation or something because they didn't make any of those payments. And say, look, I have the phone call, I had the email, the guy confirmed he was going to. What more can I do? So, Yeah, but I don't email. I just want to be reiterate. I do not email them saying like, "Where's your payment? You owe me money," stuff like that. So.
And Chris, didn't you take a course from someone based on debt collection practices and that type of thing? You want to tell the audience, just at least where you took the course, or maybe just, 2 or 3 highlights you got from doing that?
Yep, it was through ACA International. I think it might be like American Credit Association or whatever it is, but it's ACA International, and it's a .org, I think. And the class is like $100 or $150. It's dirt cheap. And they have many different levels, and it's usually for people who are getting certified to be, it's like the people who work at Allied or Madison, they usually have to get certified. So they'll go to ACA or some of these organizations that sponsor it to get certified. But I took it because, I'm not looking to become, a debt collector or servicer, but I like to know the rules in case I am speaking with people. So, so that's where I took that class, and, it's very helpful. I mean, you learn a lot. It's a lot of common sense things, but there are interesting things like about talking with family members, like, if the husband's on the debt and not the wife, you can't talk to the wife or the daughter, or so there's a lot of things like that that I didn't know, that I learned about, and just making sure also you verify who the person is, by asking them, just confirm like your last 4 of their social, or something about the property, just because a lot of times they may say, yeah, this is John, and it's really not John, because John knows it's you calling and he doesn't want to talk to you, so he hands it to his buddy. So
Yeah, you'll see in the servicing notes, you'll see the remark that they confirmed the last 4 digits of their social security number. So servicers routinely ask that to make sure they're talking to the right person.
And yeah, I agree with everything Chris just said. David, part of the reason I made sure Chris mentioned that is, it might be worth taking a course just like Chris did there. That's actually on my list of things to do. And what he said, a lot of common sense stuff, essentially be a human being. Don't call up a borrower and threaten them. Don't say, you better pay up, or, I'm going to come to your house and, do something I shouldn't do or something. Don't ever do that. I don't think you're allowed to.
Your bungee cord gutter.
Yeah.
That's right. I got a use for that bungee cord,
You know what it's like? It's almost like for those who have kids, it's like negotiating with your 6-year-old over how many cookies they can have. I mean, it's like the conversation. It's like, I want 3, no 1, 3. How about we settle at 2? And it's kind of, but again, with your child, of course, you're treating them like a human being and respectful. And, it's kind of the back and forth of, okay, how about October 31st? Well, can you really make something before the 15th? Because, it would make my boss look really good if I could get a payment in. So.
Yeah. You're treating them like a human being, but you're totally planning to win the conversation.
Yeah.
One other note, actually, that at least I do. I don't know if Chris and Gail, it wouldn't surprise me if you do it. I don't even always tell them it's my company. I just tell them I work for Stonegate Capital.
Yeah. You always have to go back to the office and
investor.
Yep.
Yeah, see if they'll approve it.
I say I need to talk to management, and management is me and my wife. So, and then sometimes it's a unilateral manager, just me, but it's not lying. You just don't have to tell them everything. So it's just one of those, another little tips to, help people potentially, avoid a bad situation. Eric Smith here asks, what are the do's and don'ts when talking to a borrower about refinancing, modification, or cash for keys? Wow, that's there's a lot to that one. That probably could be its own show, actually. I believe, Chris and Gail, you tell me if I'm wrong, unless you fall under the, one of the exceptions, but, if you did a full refinance, you'd have to, use a licensed mortgage loan originator, unless it was one of the exceptions where, it was one of the only one or one of the only 3 that you do that calendar year. So that is worth taking into account, Eric. And then the same thing with the modification. That would be one I would want to talk to my attorney about, or the title company, and see if, again, if I'm writing a modification, I believe technically that counts as a new note or a new loan. So I might have to get that also.
Yeah,
Or
if you're
cash for keys.
Yeah, actually, if you
Go
don't
ahead.
mind, Bill, Chris has done so many of these. Let him just
Yeah.
take it away.
So if you're just talking to the borrower about the option to refinance them out of the loan, or doing a modification, or even cash for keys and stuff, if you're just talking about the terms and stuff, yes, you can have that conversation. I would more or less, say, hey, we have these options available. And I had a conversation on Monday, last Friday, with a borrower, and the borrower had just finished their forbearance plan. And, so it was a conversation, got them on a conference call as a husband and wife, and, basically said, hey, look, there's 31 past due payments, on the loan. It's like, okay, here are the options, and just rolled out the options of, getting them on basically a loan mod, or actually what I wanted to do in this instance is put them on a traditional mortgage and note, and explain to them what that process was. And then I do tell everybody that the investor would buy back the property for you, and if that was something you're interested in. And typically if they did, they will give some funds to allow you to move and stuff like that. And then I don't force any of them on the borrower. I just give them the options and let them decide. And I never force them to decide at that point in time. It's, hey, get back to me next week, and let me know. And if you need more time, let me know. So
Right. Yeah. So we do cover all of these things. We've talked about them a lot of times on the podcast. There's a number of best practices that we would suggest, like when you make a cash for keys offer and agree on terms with a borrower, it's important to, even though it doesn't feel like it's something that you have to draw up a document for, like we have a standard document that we use that makes it very clear that them getting the cash for keys is contingent on some things, like they have to leave. There's going to be an inspection at the time that we're signing the agreement for the cash for keys. And the place has to be in the same condition or better when they leave. It has to be in broom swept condition. You just want to have things that protect you. And if you're at a distance, you need to have, that realtor or person who's going to actually be the one who goes and makes the inspection and tells you, yeah, it's okay to go ahead and pay them. And you're going to have the locks changed like right then and there. So, it's just, I've learned a tremendous amount from Chris about how to keep things very tidy. And I think that that's a really important lesson that we all need to learn. So,
Okay.
but without getting too bogged down,
Yeah.
I'm just dying to know how these people were living in this house without gas heat, I presume, and without water. So,
You're going to find out. That'd be ruining the ending. I just want to make sure we get to your audience questions.
Okay.
Terry Shell wants to know how he gets the link to it. That's on your website, correct?
yeah, we'll provide it after.
Okay.
Yep.
And Gail answered one. And are we allowed to record our conversation with the borrower? Roy Johnson wants to know. That depends on state law, I believe.
Yeah, you need to know the state, whether it's a one right or two right state, two-person state, one-person state, only one person has to agree, two people you both do. Typically what you should do, and we'll have another podcast on this so we can get through this, but you want to read them the mini Miranda and then ask them if you can record the conversation.
Okay. And Chris Daniel is still having a little trouble hearing you, but it sounds like it could be an issue with him. So, all right, moving on here. So the day of deliverance here, mid-September, I finally wised up, and I did finally have the attorney send a notice of demand to the borrower. and they agreed to move out on the very 1st of November. So finally.
Woohoo!
So the big day arrived. So I hired a guy to go out to the home and scales that I wanted to have the locks changed after borrowers. And teenager was sitting on the porch, and was quite evident that nothing had been moved out. And you know, teenager just says, my parents aren't home, and now we haven't moved out. And you know, I was not happy. I mean, it cost me $50 to even have the guy go out there, and he couldn't do what I paid him to do. And so the lawyer, and I called the lawyer that afternoon and had him send him another letter. So kind of what I said a little bit ago about, you know, sometimes they respond faster to that. This was a very sternly worded letter. And they did finally agree to get out, and they did get out on November the 16th. So my wife and I went out then that following Saturday on the 19th, and, you know, we arrive and wish we hadn't. Again, I kind of told you some of the highlights of it. House was just in terrible condition. There were multiple holes in the ceilings and floors and walls. There was no gas bill because there was no furnace in the house. So I'm not quite sure how they were even heating it. There was a large window missing in the upstairs. So, you know, for what, over a year, they had been staying at this home in Ohio with, you know, just a garbage bag for a window and no heat in the house. And they didn't have a water bill because they had jury rigged it and they were stealing water from the neighbor.
Awesome.
So, oh yeah. The water meter was sitting, you know, ripped out of the ground in the basement. So that was why there was no water bill. So we were a little shell-shocked, you know, that someone was living in these conditions. There were children in the house. That actually really just irritated me. Just, you know, I have my own children. Just as a parent, that really irritated me. You know, the heck with the note and that, but, you know, having children living in that house, it just did not seem, it didn't seem right to me. So next one here is a couple of the pictures I took. The upper left here, that's kind of the stairs. Like I said, they got some Leaning Tower of Pisa there. I think you can just see that bungee cord just above there. It's in white, yep. So it's a little hard to make out there. That one wall there next to that, that's a shed. The teenager thought it would be a really good idea to burn the shed. So they set fire to it. So that's what that is there. The bathroom right there, you can kind of see there's a hole in the bathroom, so that was unsafe to walk in. The tub was in really putrid condition. Really, I mean, you could just tell they didn't have a water bill. I don't know what they were doing to go to the bathroom. I honestly don't really want to know, even a couple of years later. Just general holes in the wall, and then the floor was rotting. It was, you know, it was just in rough shape.
Should have painted the word shed on the house and showed it to the teenager.
Yeah, that would have been pretty good. So that day, like I said, we were learning our lesson. We wanted to take prompt action. I knew it just sitting there wasn't going to do anybody any good. So we did what we knew how to do at the time, at least. We just listed it that day with a realtor. Dennis and Amanda Hitchcock there in Zanesville, they did a great job for us, I gotta say. I've heard some investors really disparage realtors. I can't speak for, you know, all realtors that do a great job, but Dennis and Amanda really helped us out quite a bit with this. You know, the timing was bad. That was just a week or two before Thanksgiving, and then getting into December. You have just holiday season in that. So although the realtors did a really good job, it really was not a retail house.
What did they actually tell you should do to the house to prepare it for sale, or did you not do anything?
Well, at the time, actually, I just didn't do anything. You know, they said,
to just put it up for sale and see if an investor would buy it.
Yes, exactly. Now, if I was going to do that, that's probably, in full retrospect, what I should have done, but I probably shouldn't have even just, put it up, listed it with a realtor. What I should have done is talked to a few other experts at the time and really saw what they would have done. So we had just one showing in 6 weeks, and I have a friend of mine there who's a landlord, and he basically said that I don't think you're going to get, if you sell that for this, what you're going to get out of it. So I actually had it listed at even a slight loss for us, but the realtor did agree that the house was really difficult to sell in this condition. So right at the end of December, then we did have a talk with them. And well, actually, I'll get to that. So then the basement flooded, and there was a crack in the basement pipe, and you can kind of see that dark line that's just about a foot or two below the electrical box there. Yeah, that's water. So it was probably about 3 to 4 feet of water there. So that's what I was saying, that the house almost kind of took care of itself there.
Yeah, so you had turned the water on and didn't realize that there was a problem with the pipe?
Yes, correct.
Mm-hmm.
Correct. So the contractor who wanted the job was there and agreed to pump it out for $500, and
Good price.
it's a good price. However, I have kind of wondered now, because the contractor was the one who, quote unquote, found it like this. So it has made me wonder if maybe it wasn't just a cracked pipe or something. I don't know. I can't really say for sure, but just one of those things that make you go, now a couple years later.
Yeah.
All right, next slide here. Okay, so this was kind of decision time then. This is what I was just starting to say. It was late December, and I talked with the realtors, and they said, if this house was fixed up, I mean, it would easily be worth even a lot more than what the BPO was. We think you could probably sell it in the mid-50s. So, I did my financial analysis and projections and that, and I had, I think, 4 different contractors out to do the house, to give me bids on the house. I told you my friend who was a realtor there said the house as it is right now really isn't what you're worth you have in it. But then the realtors were saying how much more it would be worth fixed up. So we decided to try that then. We decided to find a contractor and, try to do a full rehab on the house and then try to sell it retail. And we hired the contractor on 12/29. Yeah.
If I can just ask you, so how much did you have in it at this point? You had a little bit of legal, you had the purchase price, and what else had you spent?
Oh boy. I mean, I could look it up exactly, but I would have estimated mid-20s at this point.
Okay, so you bought it for 21. You had a little miscellaneous.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. I mean, there were, your contract, or not the contractor, the servicer costs, of course. I had some legal costs, just miscellaneous costs, force-placed insurance,
right.
Stuff like that.
What quotes were you getting from the contractor about what it was going to cost to get to that $50,000 sale price?
One really, really high quote I got for $35,000. There was one that was, there were 2 actually that were in the 15 to 16 range. And then the one that I ended up going with was 18,000. But he was going to do the most work. So that's why I went with him.
Okay.
So, by contract, it was supposed to be done by the end of March. I liked that because I was hoping then it would be done for a spring sale. This was the first time I'd ever hired a contractor, actually. Other than that, I've pretty much been a, do-it-yourselfer. So I really didn't know how to work with a contractor very well, but you kind of see here, I learned. So the contractor started off doing a really good job. He communicated well. We were talking regularly. He was sending me photos of progress. We spoke regularly. He did do a decent amount of work at first. He installed some back steps. Remember, I said there was about a 4 to 5 foot, gap to even get into the house. He installed back steps so you could get in and out of the house easier. He put in a furnace. He put in a water heater. He reinforced the basement. He fixed some of the holes that were in the house. He did install some new closets. We were going to take one of the rooms downstairs and convert that into a 3rd bedroom to make the house more, worth more as compared to a 2-bedroom. But however, then he really started to trail off in March. As it turned out in the end, then the house was not finished as agreed. And this was something I didn't do a good job, is really tracking how much work he was doing and had done compared to how much money he was asking for. That was just, I should have taken a more active role and gone out there. And really from the start, you should really, the proper way to do it, I mean, this would be a whole nother really hour webcast for you here, but you should really come up with an exact scope of work. We did do that, but I didn't have it really spaced out in terms of scheduling or in terms of when this is done, I will free up this amount of money.
Mm-hmm.
That's a better way to go about doing it. A draw schedule, exactly. Thank you. I was struggling for that word for a minute. So, I finally ended up just officially firing the contractor in 7/2 in the early July. He'd said also that he was having some health problems, and that's fine, well and good. I understand that, but just because you're having health problems, it doesn't mean that you have the right to steal from me.
Mm-hmm.
He probably did approximately $6,000 worth of work, and I think I had paid him roughly 13 or 14. So I probably lost roughly $8,000 there. So next slide.
That's one thing you mentioned there, Bill. I just want to mention is if you're having contractors and if you're from afar, send somebody by, whether you have a preservation company just to go by, and that's, I've had home inspect, I tried to do one renovation from afar that failed miserably.
Yep.
And never even got to starting the work. But
oh, jeez. I at least got some work out of the guy.
That's what Chris does for a living, is manage construction projects.
So, by the way, if you need a schedule of values, a scope of work, just hit me up. I'll send you one. The only challenge I have is most people won't sign it.
They won't even read it, Chris. It's too long.
Oh, yeah. They won't read it. It's a little lengthy, but it covers you in many aspects. It's written for you as the owner, not for them as a contractor. So it's, lopsided to you, of course, because you own the property and how you're going to pay them. But yeah, that's one of the things I'll mention for people is if you're doing rehabs and stuff, make sure you send somebody by.
And you're exactly right, Chris. And I could have and should have done that. I told you I did. I got along really well with those realtors. I'm quite sure that they would have been willing to do that. But it was officially not, under their listing here. When I signed up with the contractor, we had to terminate the listing. I told them I was planning to list it with them again, but at that time it wasn't listed. But, I'm sure I could have, I'm sure that they would have either just out of kindness, or I could have given them even a little bit of money, here's $20 to go and just drive by and make sure that this work is being done, something like that.
Preservation company is good too.
Yes, exactly. Property preservation, realtor, just somebody that's kind of looking after your interests. So like I said, I already kind of gave that first part away there, but then also just know when to talk to others. Like Chris just said, I mean, Chris does this professionally all day long, and his rehab failed miserably. It can be really hard and challenging to rehab from afar. And that's why a lot of people, it's kind of down on their list of options. It's kind of a last resort. You know, I should have physically gone out to the house more often. I should have insisted more work be done. And, you know, the other thing, the other contractors, and part of the reason I hired that one is because he was immediately available. And there might be a reason for that. The other ones were saying, yeah, I can get to it. It might be a month or two. You know, that means they're in demand. That means that, you know, they're actually working in the field right then and there. David, I was about an hour and a half away from the house. And it doesn't sound like a lot, but, you know, I had kids and, you know, recitals and track meets and such to go to. Life just gets in the way. Jeffrey Wolf, thank you. So on to plan C. So I found another contractor who was much better. And I did learn. I started hiring him, and I didn't think I was going to do the whole rehab at this point, but I did start to hire him to do a few jobs. So, for example, the original contractor never had fixed that porch I told you was in really, really bad shape. I realized I can't even have anyone, you know, kind of liability concern. I can't even really have anyone go out and look at the house when, you know, they literally might fall through the porch. So he did fix up that front porch for me. He fixed up a little bit of siding. I was looking in at starting to do some of the work myself just to, you know, really get this over with. You can imagine I wasn't in too good a mood with this. The second contractor actually did pretty good work, and you know, at least got the house. I hadn't fixed the bathroom. I just had ribbon over that not to go inside it, but you know, for the most part they could at least walk around. But then that contractor hurt himself on another job, so plan C didn't work, and then we were on to really plan D at this point. So I talked to some other note investors. Like Gail said, I talked with her a little bit. I talked with another guy by the name of Wayne Snell that I don't know if he's been on your show or not. I talked with some people that really don't even do notes, and they just do general real estate. Vina Jones-Cox is pretty well known here, especially in Ohio, but even nationally. She's a very accomplished real estate investor herself. So I just kind of threw myself on the mercy of others and was asking for advice. And, you know, they recommended that I just sell the house as is with seller financing. And in retrospect, that probably would have been the very best course of action. But what did I do with that really good advice? Essentially, I did nothing, which was really the worst possible choice. So why did I do nothing? Just because, honestly, at the time, I was really afraid. I had never done that. It sounded very, you know, mysterious, and, you know, you had to stand around the sacred fire to do something like that. I just did not know how. Again, as part of having a growth mindset is being willing to do things differently and willing to do something that you've never done before. You know, the old saying, if you want something that you've never had, you do have to do something you've never done. So that's another thing that I really learned from this. I think my next slide says that, you know, is essentially like a limiting belief. You know, at this point, I was just positive. I was swearing up and down, you know, nothing can good of this godforsaken house. This is the Zanesville horror at this point, you know, and, you know, Vina and Wayne and Gail, they all, you know, think it's going to be so easy just to sell those to a seller financing. Well, they're wrong because they haven't seen this house, gosh darn it. And, you know, that's just a limiting belief, which really wasn't doing me very much good.
I'm just happy I'm not the only one who has trouble in Ohio.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, the other thing is, again, just what I'm getting at here, even Chris, other people have made similar or worse mistakes, okay? I'm not the first guy in the entire planet that this has ever happened to. And, you know, again, I just had to get out of my own way.
Yes, Ohio is where dreams go to die. Am I right?
Oh, come on now. Ohio is my state. You will not get me to badmouth Ohio. I mean,
Pennsylvania is just almost just as bad.
Well, I would argue Pennsylvania's worse, but that's another.
That's actually, that would be a great topic to have you two put on the gloves and see which is a worse state, Ohio or Pennsylvania. Because that's like,
You gonna get someone from New York or New Jersey on also, though? I mean,
so we know those are worse. So.
Yeah.
Exactly. So we're not like the bottom of the barrel, but we're just above the.
We can all agree we hate them.
Okay. So my next steps then, I finally did end up getting out of my own way. And so in early January, I still don't know exactly why I did this, but I got up early in the morning and, just put some free ads in Facebook and Craigslist. Essentially a, for sale by owner with seller financing. And I was going to the house that day just to check on it. I was starting to go out there fairly regularly, and I was just amazed. I got a number of people that started calling really within an hour of putting the ads up. And I met actually 3 people at the house that afternoon that wanted to see it.
Right. Did you put a price on it, Bill?
I did. I have the slide in I have my ad in the very next slide. So this is the actual slide, or the actual sales ad that I posted. People can read that. It's nothing amazing. I had not taken a copywriting course or anything at that time or anything. What I did learn through the course of this is that seller finance really is a draw that will open up your house to a whole number of people that otherwise would not be interested in it. People that for whatever reason, either they're afraid of going to a bank or they just know for sure that they can't qualify through a bank. And that's really the target audience that was going to be interested in this house. Again, you've heard the whole tale up till this moment. And, this was like, rays of sunshine coming down, and it's, I might have just done a happy dance there that afternoon when I was over at the house. Someone that afternoon wanted the house. He said, I'll give you exactly what you want for it. That particular gentleman didn't turn out to be a really good option. There were just better other potential borrowers out there. But, I can't tell you how good it felt to have someone, just say, yeah, this isn't that bad. I can deal with this. I'll give you exactly what you're asking. The other thing I will mention, actually, I did actually get some very negative comments based on this also. People did the math and, $416 a month for 20 years, that's way more than the house is worth. Well, yeah, but, you get a place to live for that 20 years. And not only that, but, an apartment would probably cost you even more than that. It would cost you more to rent a similar house. So my point in mentioning this is, some people will tear you down. Just don't worry about it. I didn't even reply to those negative comments.
People who don't have experience getting loans for things don't realize how much interest you pay over the time. So it's just, I just turn it around. I say, hey, I know, I got the same thing with my mortgage. Like, that's just how it is.
Yep.
Exactly. Comment for future posts, Bill. If you do post for seller financing, you do have to include the interest rate. You should, when you post
all the terms.
Yep. When you post part of Dodd-Frank, if you're posting for seller financing, you need to post the length, the price, which you have, the monthly payment, and the interest rate. So just FYI.
Okay. Well, see, there you go, everybody. Again, this was a first time I'd ever done this. I know I didn't do everything perfectly, but that's how you learn sometimes, it's, Yoda, failure is the best teacher, Yes, people might know that about me. I have my geek tendencies sometimes.
So, Bill, I don't want to keep you from being Bill, but we're running a little late. If we could, kind of whip through.
So, selling via seller financing, I collected applications from all the parties. I ran background checks. I found a young family who had other family just very, very close by. They were handy and able to make repairs. They were really excited to buy the house. They had $3,500 to put down, and they expressed interest at the time in paying off the loan faster. He apparently got bonuses at work, and he asked if that would be okay.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think we can work with that. I found a
Nice
little
down payment too, actually.
Yes, he had a down payment. Exactly. The other guy I told you that the very first day wanted it. He had, I can come up with about $100.
Yeah, you never want to give somebody a house without substantial
Exactly
upfront.
So I found a local attorney who was able to write the contract. I used, my note contacts and got hooked up with an RMLO who was able to give it the seal of approval, and that helps to increase the value of the note if I ever want to sell it. I had to make a few changes to follow Ohio law, actually. At the time, I thought, I was planning to sell it with a 9.5% interest. But at least the attorney said, at least in this instance, for most homes, 8% exactly is the maximum by law. The borrower agreed. I actually had to go back to the borrower and said, well, I got good news and bad news. The interest rate, I'm going to have to change that. So what I'm going to do is increase the value of the house just a little bit, but I'm going to work it so that you pay $10 a month less. Is that okay? And that's all he fixed on was, $10 a month. Okay. So that was fine. And I worked with FINAC actually up in Michigan to design the most marketable note. There's different terms I was looking at, and what I ended up with was this. So we ended up with a 20-year term. That's what he really liked. He liked the fact that it could get paid off faster. 8% is the max allowable by Ohio law, like Chris mentioned. The present value, that was the principal that would be paid off in the note, was the $39,800. Payment was $331, plus about $110 to $120 for taxes and insurance. Brought his payment up around the $450 mark. He was very happy with that. He just wanted to be below $500. I did not put a balloon on this one, partly because I just wanted to make sure it would go through with no hassles, and I thought that might throw it off. So that was the terms of the note.
So Bill, you said in your ad that the monthly payment was $416. Was that including the taxes?
Yeah,
Yes.
it said taxes, insurance, yeah.
Yes. So we closed the sale then in March of 2016. Whoops, wait a minute. Nope.
Yeah.
That
18 probably.
correct. 2018. I'm sorry. Yeah, I should say 2018. I'm sorry. That is an error. Total sale was the $43,300. That includes the principal and the down payment. So my total invested when everything was 100% said and done to every last penny was that figure there, just 41 something. So the profit by the numbers, I will make a little bit of money on this, but obviously this was not a great deal. And that was after 2 years of not making anything. However, it's now to the point now they have been pretty good borrowers. To this point, they're actually paid ahead of where they would be on their amortization schedule. So, I could resell the note at this point and now break even. I still might do that sometime, or I might sell a partial on it. This kind of what I was saying before, just the value that I got from the experience and the lessons was really priceless, and the relief of selling the asset was even more priceless. So kind of in the long term, then things don't always go perfect, but if you keep at it, you can make mistakes and still end up okay. So that is the epic tale.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, there's a lot to the story, but there's a few things that stick out to me. One is just the persistence. And here's the thing though. It's, you've got this asset, you're stuck with it.
Mhm.
Digging a hole and sticking your head in the ground isn't going to make the issues go away.
Exactly.
So you got to, sometimes, review and analyze, and you get to a point where, you make the decision, and do I sell it and take the loss, or do I renovate it to try and make money? That's always an option that comes up for people on what they want to do. And sometimes, like for me, my preference is I'd rather sometimes take the loss up front than try and renovate it. And the reason why is, I think it's more about the time it's going to
Exactly.
take me working full time as well to manage somebody knowing that I do it full time, how hard construction is. So
Ideally, if I had this all to do over, I would have either done a very minimal rehab just to the point where, the house was safe to walk into, and then just try to sell it with seller financing. If I just made a little bit different decisions, if I had paid just a little less for the note, maybe, oh, $6,000-7,000, and then if I had roughly ballpark $8,000 with the contractor, I would have done okay with it. But that's how you learn sometimes, is, just sticking at it like Chris just said.
Well, the other thing that stuck out at me is this starts as a performing note, and you do pay more for when it's considered performing, but how important that property value is,
Yes.
understanding, because if you take it back, no matter what, at the end of the day, that's what you're getting back.
Exactly correct. Exactly correct. That was why I said that was pretty crucial. Don't ever, ever, ever take a seller's word for the value of the house or anything. You laugh, but that's kind of what I was taught at the time.
Yes, it's a sad, sad experience to laugh.
Yes.
We've all been there.
Thank you, David. David just said good points. Any other comments or questions from you, Chris or Gail, or anybody else watching?
So this has been going since March of last year or this year?
2018, so almost a year and a half.
So it's a happy ending? Everything's still going well?
Yeah, like I said, I think they've missed 1 or 2 months, but or they were late, but they paid within the 30-day window. And as I said, they have actually been paying some extra at times. And as it stands here today, they are ahead of their amortization schedule. So they're on track right now to pay it off in less than that 20 years.
Right.
So Bill, was this with your own funds, or did you have an investor?
This was with my own funds.
So you're going to keep this, right, Bill? Because you can't really sell it as a performing note without taking a little bit of a loss, right?
He's going to sell it as a partial.
He's going to sell it partial.
If I do sell it, I will probably be exactly, Chris. Probably do it as a partial. I have considered selling it, but at this point, the longer I keep it, the better those numbers end up looking in the end. So, it's if I do sell it, it'll be as a partial, very likely. I've got a pretty good borrower. At this point, it's a good, solid performing note.
Sell 20 grand of it as a partial, get that money back, get half your money back out of the deal, and then use the 20 grand for your next one.
Yeah. There's something that I would just like to say about taking a loss on a deal. I have yet another one that is in my IRA that I have the house is under contract to be sold to an investor, and I'm waiting in terror to find out how much is owed on the house, because I thought I knew before I agreed to a purchase price, but it turned out there were some additional liens that I wasn't aware of. So anyway, I understand the desire and the temptation to really not want to take the loss and to hold on. And I'm not in any way saying that you made any bad decisions about how to handle this. But I was very tempted to hold on to this property. It needs a ton of renovation. It'll need a ton of money, rather just sort of not to take a loss, But I kind of realized that I would hate renovating this house. I would hate everything that I have to do.
Yep.
And that even though I'm going to take a loss, I am going to walk away with something. And I have ideas for how I can redeploy that money to kind of make back the money that I lost. And
Exactly.
basically, I would rather do that than stay in this.
Yep.
And I feel like it's become sort of a matter of pride that you don't want to take a loss.
Yep.
But sometimes it's really, better to take a loss and just kind of, move your funds into something else and just, keep rolling.
Yeah, well, exactly. That's experience. I mean, I'll be honest. I was kind of naive. I really, truly expected just to, write out the check and then walk back in on March 31st and have a, my little mini palace.
Performing note. Why shouldn't you think that?
Well, no, I mean, even after it was non-performing, I really anticipated that the contractor would just, make it a little mini palace, and I'd walk back in late March and, be able to sell that bad boy for, mid 50s and, make, I think I had projected like a $13,000 profit or something if I did that at that time.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because like when you mention contractors, I've got one right now that I've got a property in Montana that the pictures, I think I put the pictures up on the group because I said about the clean out.
That's where those are from.
Yep. So it's in Montana where I've got the clean out going on. And I hired the guy on Friday who we met with the agent, and he said he'd have everything done by the end of this week. And there was a lot of stuff. So I reached out to the agent because the guy's like, hey, I'm going to wrap up and stuff. And hey, send me the money. And I'm like, well, let me confirm with the agent that everything is done first, or I'll send somebody by. And he's like, well, I want the money. And I'm like, you'll get the money when I confirm the work is actually done. He's like, I can send you pictures. And I'm like, you can send me all the pictures in the world, but I've never been to the house. So I don't know if you're missing a room and stuffed everything in a room. I mean, I checked the guy's a legitimate contractor. He has a license. I got his W-9 right up front. So he seems legit, but it's still, I mean, it goes to the point of, trust but verify.
Exactly. And that's what I didn't do.
So.
Oh, Lordy.
Yeah, that happened to me on my Fort Wayne one, which is the one I was going to rehab that I never did do. Never got around to it, and I'm just glad I sold it. So,
exactly. Exactly.
Any other questions for people out there?
Although, Dale, you've done a couple long distance rehabs that worked out pretty well, correct?
Yeah. So I also lost money to scamming contractors. So
okay. So
it's just really, really challenging.
One note, actually, I will add for the audience. A lot of people will use their self-directed IRAs to do these, and just be really careful because if you buy that in your self-directed IRA, all those listed on the screen right now, every penny of that has to come out of that IRA. Well, technically, I guess your IRA could borrow money or something, but then it's getting to be complicated and you might deal with UBIT and that type of thing. So anyway, my point is that's a whole nother subject. Just be really careful and know that, whatever investment you buy in a self-directed IRA has to be managed with all the funds from that IRA.
Yes. So when the unexpected happens,
exactly.
That's true with everything. You need to have reserve funds because just can't go too close to the wire on it. No.
Okay, so I don't see any more questions. So Bill, how can people reach out to you? Because you're active in the note industry and I know you do your Sunday night videos and
this
stuff.
This is where Heidi just put the email address behind your head.
Yes.
Yep. And actually, can you so my screen comes up on the screen?
Hold on, I'll try and see if I can share it or share yours.
Make Bill big again.
Hold on.
I think he wants his, there we go.
Yeah. But seeing people might not be watching this and may be listening, why don't you tell us the best way people can contact you?
Sure. Yes, my name is Bill Greismer, and I'm on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn. I'd love to link up with people there. I do a weekly video almost every Sunday at 8 o'clock p.m. on Facebook Live. I do have a YouTube channel. If you just YouTube my name, it's a customized channel for me. You can just Google my name and then YouTube. And what I'll do is make sure I put a slide with all my contact information in there. My phone number, I'll just give everyone my phone number and email also. Email is Bill, B-I-L-L, at stonegatecap.net. You can kind of see that right there above me. And then my phone number, I'll just give out my cell phone. It's 614-284-0071.
Good. And this will
I
also
realized I do have a Google phone, and I thought about handing that out, but what's that?
Your fake phone number. Is that what you're saying?
Oh, no, actually, that's my real cell phone.
Yeah. No.
I realized if I was ever going to call someone back, then they'd have my real phone number anyway. So, and I know a lot of the folks on here. And
Yeah, you don't want these people calling your regular phone number, but I guess too late. No.
yeah, that's all right.
We have wonderful people at our open mic nights. Actually, we do actually have a really great, solid, and very consistent group of people. So it's
Sure
very nice. Yeah, Bill, also, you have a connection with Donna Bauer too, right? Are you
Yes, I
guys
do.
teaming up to do anything?
Well, we just had her, Donna just had her 4-day note buying academy here. It was just last weekend, actually. And I presented this case study there, actually, and helped out a little bit with a couple of other talks here and there during the 4-day event. And Donna's just a top-notch instructor, really honest, really ethical. And I'll tell you what, that woman is so detail focused, really unlike any other note instructor that I've ever met. Even so much that, you know, you ask her something, she gets in and looks at the actual verbatim wording and says, you know, I don't like how this line is worded here. If you were to buy this note, I would insist on this being changed.
Yeah, that sounds like someone I know.
Well, for example, if you have a note and it does not spell out compounded monthly, if you don't have those 2 key words in there, and then it was to go to court, you know, the judge could rule that they just have to pay you simple interest, and that's all. And that's, you know, gets into the mathematics of it, but that's a big decrease in your return on investment if you're just making simple interest as compared to compounded interest. But again,
Right.
It has to say that in those words on the note. Just another little tip for everybody that I learned from Donna.
Does Donna deal with CFDs as well, out of curiosity, or is she more just into notes?
She will do CFDs. Yeah, Donna does more so non-performing, but she also does some and also teaches non-performing notes as well.
Okay.
But her focus is ballpark 75, 80% performing, and the remainder non-performing.
Okay.
But she will do some CFDs, yes.
Good. You going to be attending any industry events in the near future, Bill?
Yes, I will be at Note Expo here the first part of November there in Dallas, Texas. So I'd love to meet everybody there. They're welcome to come up and introduce themselves. And David Chance, fantastic. I look forward to meeting you there in person.
David's very tall, so you'll be able to find him wherever he is.
Well, I'm fairly tall. I don't know if I'm as tall as him, but maybe we can, you know, look out and see each other sticking out in the crowd.
David has goats.
Totally.
What's that?
David has goats.
He has goats? Okay.
Interesting fact, I know.
Awesome. I never knew that. I just learned, well, I didn't just learn. I talked to Alex Goldovsky today from Pro Title. His children are chess prodigies.
Uh-huh.
And it turns out Alex is now playing competitive chess. So don't try to out-strategize him. He's like completely several moves ahead of you, no matter what you're doing.
I did see just a couple of questions on here. David Chance, yeah, it's a good idea to get the RMLO before you advertise. Kind of, that's just what Chris was saying. Although the RMLO has to check out the borrower, so he can't do all the work before that. And just what Gail's kind of followed up, kind of what I just said now, the RMLO can't do a ton of stuff ahead of time. So
one thing I'll mention with an RMLO too is don't think like it takes a day to get the process done. I'm in one right now going on its third or fourth week and back and forth on information. And then they finally give the disclosures. And once you give the disclosures, you still have to wait 4 days. So it's time consuming too.
It's not instantaneous.
No, it's really the same. It's really the same as like going to a bank, honestly.
Yeah. They need a lot of cooperation from the borrower.
Yes.
And that's the tough part. Like
Roy Johnson referring to David Chance says goats and notes. So maybe that's some type of a marketing opportunity there for you. Goats and notes. I like that. Christina Fuller is hoping to make it to Note Expo. I hope you can, Christina.
Cool.
Good. Well, I think why don't we wrap up this evening of the Good Deeds Note Investing podcast. Bill, great to see you again. And be on again. We enjoy always your company is being on the podcast, and definitely we'll keep in touch with you. Gail, any final thoughts before we head out?
No, thanks everyone for joining us. Thank you, Bill, for being so candid and sharing, even things that we all are a little shy about mentioning because we're all trying to look, like we know more than we do. Yep. But obviously you don't reach any level of expertise without paying your dues along the way with the things that happen. So
again, I just want to repeat, this was the very first note I ever bought.
Yes.
Tried to be crystal clear, but that's why I made, so that's why it went the way it did.
Yeah. And I'll be honest with you, I bet you'll learn more from that experience than you did on probably the next 3 or 4.
Yeah, and I think people watching are going to learn a tremendous amount about what to do and not do. So thank you for sharing so generously.
You're very welcome. My pleasure.
So thank you, everyone, for joining us. Great to be with you again. Please be sure to visit our website and sign up for our mailing list if you haven't already. I think all these people are on it pretty much. Please leave us a review on what are all the places, Chris?
iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and anywhere else so you can listen to a podcast.
Really? Talk about us at Thanksgiving. Tell people how great note investing is. I have a feeling people are kind of catching on. I'm seeing just a tremendous amount of discussion about note investing in, I feel like we used to have the joint to ourselves, but not so much anymore. So, yes, and be sure to come back next Thursday. We will have another scary story, hopefully with also a happy ending like Bill's had.
You got it.
Yeah, thank you all.